We're going to continue our discussion looking at Mintzberg and what managers do. So according to Mintzberg, managers need to be visionaries. They need to have that artistic lean, the creative insight. They also need to be good at the craft. They need to have the experience, the practical learning, that technical knowledge. They also need to be a scientist in terms of being able to analyze, collect evidence, draw conclusions. So as we look at these different parts of what managers do, let's think about some managers that we might know. I'm just going to go forward here. If I can get this to go forward, come back to that. All right, so you might think of Steve Jobs, Elon Musk, Jeff Bezos, Sheryl Sandberg. You might think of managers in terms of sports like Jose Mourinho. As we think about these individuals, think about, are they more artistic visionaries? Are they more technical expertise? Are they more analytical in terms of collecting data, measuring how well we're performing, and taking that corrective action? Mintzberg, in his book, Simply Managing, has an interesting little quiz to see where you are in terms of that art and science and craft. So take a moment, and for each row, identify which term most speaks to you. Which one sounds like you? So for example, in the first row, ideas, experiences, facts. Which one more sounds like you? And then go to the next one. Intuitive, practical, analytical, heart, hands, head, and continue on. So we want to know is which one in each row you identify with. And then once you're done, count the number of circles that you have in that particular column. So we'll pause for a second while you go through. Your total scores, when you add up the numbers in that bottom row, they should add up to 10. All right, so if you need more time, pause the video. Otherwise, let's look at how many in each column you recognized in yourself. So the question is, are they equally balanced? Do you have the same or close to the same number in each of the three columns? Or do you have one column where it has a much bigger number than the others? Well, according to Mintzberg, we should have a balance of the three as effective managers. The concern that Mintzberg has is if you are dominant in one of these particular areas, then you may have issues in terms of managing. For example, let's suppose that you have the first column, okay, as dominant. Let's say you have 8 out of the 10, 7 out of the 10 in this column. Okay. Well, the risk is that if you are only focused on vision and creativity and seeing what the ideal is, that you may be a narcissist. Okay? We want you to have some vision so you can be insightful and innovative and create opportunities for the organization. But if you're solely focused on that vision and creative insight, then that can impact your ability to lead others. Sometimes when we think about some of the managers that we know today, we know them because they are those visionaries, right? Coming up with new and unique things. But we also know about them because they might be a little eccentric. They might be difficult to have as a boss. And so are they difficult because they are skewed towards that visionary piece, which makes them more of a narcissist than insightful. Perhaps you had column 2, and so you are focused very much on the technical, the practical, and you are very much in the craft. We want knowledge, expertise, that practical know-how, so that you are engaged in what the organization is doing. But if your sole focus is on that technical piece, then you can be a little bit tedious to work with. Maybe you are the third column. You are very focused on analysis, on facts, on data collection. Okay? We want that to some degree because we need to be able to analyze the performance of the organization, that's a whole control part, and improve the operations. But if your sole focus is on the data, then you can be seen as calculating, and others may not be as willing to work for you. So as we go back to some of those people that we've seen, we might, as we place them, we probably know about them because they're probably somewhere on one of the extremes. The challenge if you are a visionary, so you're focused on the art, and you're focused on the analysis and data collection, is that as a manager, as a leader, you can be disconnected from what's actually possible and be quite the task manager, quite controlling in terms of, well, why doesn't this meet spec? Why can't we get this done for this price? It doesn't match the vision, and the data is not matching what you expect. So you will become a disconnected manager if you are mostly art and science, disorganized if it's mostly art and craft. The managers, the leaders we hear the least about are those who are science and craft, what Mintzberg calls dispirited managing. Without that artistic creative piece, we don't tend to know their names when they are in that position, but they can also lead to challenges for the organization, not having that charisma of the leader, that vision and innovation. So according to Mintzberg, ideally your management should be a balance of the three. So then the question for you is, where are you on this triangle? So we're starting to think about, as we work through this, is what does it mean to be a good manager? What does it mean to be a bad manager? And if you are in this course, BUS 2110 for points, then what you are working on right now is that pre-assessment, the beginning of the course, that is looking at how you define being a good manager or a bad manager. So as we're hearing from different theorists, content experts on what they see from studying many, many managers, what they see as being effective manager skills and competencies, what do you think makes a good manager? What do you think makes a bad manager? So if you're doing the assignment, go into our learning management system in Blackboard, and fill out that Google form about what you think makes a good manager or a bad manager. It will automatically send you a PDF copy. Hang on to that, because at the end of the semester, we'll do a post-assessment to see if your perspective has changed. So we want to look at the skills and competencies of good managers according to these theorists. So as we look at what does it take to make a good manager needs to have some conceptual skills. They need to analyze complex situations. That was the bottom of the triangle, that analysis portion. So you need to be able to collect data, make observations, and from there draw conclusions. You need to have interpersonal skills, right? A big part of management is leading others, influencing others, persuading others. So you need to be able to work effectively. You need the technical skills, right? That's the other piece, the bottom of that Mintzberg triangle, which is that job-specific knowledge and techniques. You're also going to need political skills in order to establish connections, networks. You're going to be a liaison or a spokesperson. And you'll need to be able to coordinate with others. And as we said, build that influence. We can go into a bit more detail in terms of competencies of management by managers by going back to Mintzberg. So Mintzberg fleshes these out a bit more by looking at personal competencies. So you need to be able to manage yourself internally. You need to be a strategic thinker. You need to be able to reflect on your strengths and weaknesses, what went right, what went wrong, so we can take corrective action in terms of our own behaviors. We need to be able to manage ourselves externally, deal with stress, move up within the organization and manage our career and manage our time. We need to schedule, right? So as a manager, you're probably in lots of meetings. So can you turn projects and works into obtainable, chewable? You can finish them off chunks. How are you going to prioritize the projects you're working on and set agendas? In terms of the interpersonal competencies, right, you have to lead individuals. You have to lead teams. You'll need to lead the overall organization depending on what level of management you're at, which can include building the culture, the general expectations and behaviors and feelings that we have within the organization. You will be administering, setting goals, doing performance appraisals. You'll be doing networking, lobbying, representing the organization, representing the stakeholders. So that goes back to the discussions we had before in terms of being that liaison, as well as if we go back to Barnard in terms of that moral leadership, in terms of that representing the organization. Right. Actually, let's just go wee all the way back. Super fast. So that official responsibility, that corporate responsibility, right? Acting on behalf of the stakeholders and the organization. All right, let's go back. Speed through. All right, so we need to have personal competencies. We need to have interpersonal competencies. We need to have informational competencies, right? So we need to be able to communicate verbally. You're going to need to interview people, do presentations. We're also going to need to be able to listen to others. We need to communicate non-verbally, especially in operations management. You're going to do a lot of observation. You need to see things, sense things, ask the right questions in order to solve the problems. So we have the verbal and nonverbal communications, and then the analysis. Based on what we've seen, based on the information we've collected, what kind of decisions can we make? We have actional competencies. That is, there's designing. So that's the planning, the crafting, developing the vision and the strategy. What is it your team is trying to achieve? What are the goals for your project? And mobilizing, putting out fires, getting people scheduled and setting goals or milestones for your project, negotiating in terms of what can be done, what needs to be done, what resources we need. We also see a list of competencies of good managers from the Harvard Business Review. They generalize the list as building trust and credibility, emotional intelligence. We're hearing that a lot lately in terms of not your IQ, but your EQ. How well do you empathize and work with others? Are you able to manage yourself? That's that time, that stress. Are you able to manage other individuals? Are you able to manage teams and manage the business? So you can see we've looked at 3 different sources in terms of competencies of good managers, and they all are quite in agreement in terms of what kind of skills a good manager needs to have.